What's up, guys? Artem MMA Analysis here. Going to be talking about Bellator 278 Velasquez versus Carmouche. Very exciting card. It's the first of two cards in a row, two back-to-back days in a row, taking place in Hawaii, which is pretty awesome for Bellator in my opinion, making their appearance in Hawaii. A few Hawaiian fighters on the card, and a few former UFC fighters, a few debuting guys in Bellator. Just letting you guys know, as a little disclaimer, I'm not super familiar with Bellator personally, because I'm a lot more of like a UFC and PFL sort of person, but I'm really trying to get into Bellator. I'm really trying to expand my reach, I guess you could say. I am really trying to get into Bellator, so let me give you my picks so far, and I have actually had a pretty good pick rate so far in the last couple of cards that I've done, which is pretty awesome. So Dante Schiro versus Scotty. I feel like this is definitely an easy win for Dante Schiro. Scotty hasn't fought for 2 years. In fact, the last time he fought was obviously 2 years ago at 155 pounds, and now he's going to be fighting at 170 pounds. Dante Schiro is going to be a little bit bigger than him. He's 6'1" as is, and he does have a split decision loss to Logan Storley, and Logan Storley is a pretty decent prospect in Bellator right now. He does have a couple of cool wins, like over a guy with a veteran, 40-24 and 15-5 over Kenny Robertson there. Scotty once again hasn't fought for 2 years. I'm going to be picking Schiro to win this one. I think that decent amount of confidence there. The odds haven't been released, but I do think he's going to be a pretty big favourite. Speaking of big favourites, Makoa Cooper is sitting minus 800 over Blake Perry right now. You got Blake Perry at plus 500. I mean, why would you throw minus 800 down at a guy that is 1-0 with 2 amateur fights? Blake Perry went 5-3 as an amateur. He's actually coming off a 4-fight win streak in his amateur career. He was 1-3 at one point, and now he's going to be making his pro debut against a pretty decent prospect in Makoa Cooper. He is only 21.5 years old, and he does have good power in the hands. All 3 wins by KO. In fact, he had about a 2-year hiatus before he made his debut, a professional debut in Titan FC over Roteus Thrasher. But I'm going to be going Makoa Cooper by KO, but I feel like these odds are just way too wide. These are very untouchable odds for a fight like this. I can't be picking Makoa Cooper at minus 5. I can't be betting him at minus 800, so I would say this is probably a fight to stay away from, unless you're going with the fight doesn't go the distance prop. I'm going to go with Makoa Cooper to win by KO here. Blake Perry, though, plus 500. If you got $5, maybe you could put it down, but I really wouldn't recommend throwing any money at it, guys, with only one professional fighter even making their professional debut. Weber Almeida, I feel like, is a pretty good prospect for Bellator right now, but he is almost 35 years old, so I'd say he's actually a little bit too old to be a prospect here, but he is fighting Fabricio Franco, and I will be picking Weber Almeida to get a win here. He does have a few KOs in a row before he ran into Johnny Soto, who beat him by decision, but he knocked out Salim Mokadinov, he knocked out Castle Williams, and he knocked out Odin Chinchilla before that he was fighting on the regional scene with a big hiatus in between his Bellator debut and those regional fights. But he's going to be fighting Fabricio Franco, who did recently lose at Combate, and prior to that he was fighting on the regional scene against not the greatest levels of competition, and he has taken a decent hiatus in between those two fights. I'm going to be going with Weber Almeida to win this one. I think Weber Almeida is sitting around like minus 350 right now. Yes, he is minus 350 on REF. That's the only source that I've really got for the odds right now. But I'm going to be going with Almeida to win the fight. Probably another KO as well. Yeah, I'm going to keep going with Almeida KO. You know what? He's got 3 KOs in Bellator so far. I'm going to be going with him to get another one. Erik Perez versus CJ Hamilton. So Erik Perez is a very interesting one. He got cut from the UFC after a couple of wins, and then he corner fought on Combate, which is a pretty good regional sort of promotion, I guess. Yeah, so yeah, he won a few fights by decision, got cut from the UFC, fought 2 years later. So I didn't actually research it, but I'm assuming there's potentially like a USADA going on if he took 2 years off between these fights. But anyway, he fought a couple of guys on the regional scene, and then he's come into Bellator, lost to Toby Masek and Josh Hill, who Josh Hill's actually a pretty good opponent in my opinion, and then he beat Blaine Shutt pretty recently. CJ Hamilton on a 2-fight losing streak in Bellator to Magomedov and Mateus Matos. Prior to that, he was winning at Combate Americas and NFC. Also has a loss to LFA as well, and I do cover LFA on my channel. But moving on, I think Erik Perez will win this one with decision. It's a pretty confident pick, and I think Erik Perez is about minus 300. Well, I think maybe that's a pretty good parlay piece. Just put Erik Perez in there. Yeah, I'm going to be picking him to win. Okay, this is a massive mismatch to start to start Bellator, or to start the Bellator career of Tofiq Musayev. Tofiq Musayev holds a win over Patricky Pitbull, and I believe that Patricky Pitbull is actually the 155-pound champion right now. So Tofiq Musayev fighting a guy like Zane, I feel like they're really just setting up Tofiq Musayev to get another win here. Zane, though, I do kind of respect him. He has kind of fought literally everywhere. I mean, he's fought for Dana White's Contender Series, he's fought for LFA, he's fought for Eagle FC, he fought Luke grades above at 165, he fought at 170 against Gilmore and Fahea, and he's also beaten Steven Siler in 7 seconds, which is pretty crazy. But no, if we move down, he's fought for Bellator before as well, and he did fight Justin Gonzalez on the Contender Series. Justin Gonzalez is actually now signed to Bellator himself, but Zane, he's a free agent, and he really does just kind of fight everywhere. Tofiq Musayev, I mean, he's got a win over Patricky Pitbull. I really don't know why they're not putting him in there with the contenders. I feel like after this, they'll throw him in there with a top 10 155-pound contender. Tofiq Musayev to win. He's like minus 1,200 right now, so pretty unplayable line, and I don't think that Zane is a live underdog here. I mean, he does actually have pretty good KO power, and he is from Hawaii, so he is going to have the home crowd advantage, really. But I'm just going to be going with Tofiq Musayev to win this fight here. I'm pretty confident in it as well. So Manny Muro versus Nate Andrews. This is a pretty weird fight in my opinion. Both guys are pretty old. In fact, Nate Andrews is my pick, and he's 38 years old, and Manny Muro is 35. Nate Andrews, though, on a 2-fight losing streak after losing to Chris Wade, who is a pretty good fighter over at PFL, and Saad Awad in his Bellator debut 10 months ago. Manny Muro also lost his Bellator fight most recently to Usman Magomedov. And then I did beat Devin Powell and Nick Neal, who are a couple of decent wins, I guess you could say. Oh, you know what? Like, Manny Muro is probably a very live underdog now that I think about it. But I'm going to be going with the more experienced Nate Andrews, the guy with the PFL experience. Yeah, I'm going to be going with Nate Andrews to win the fight in this one. But it's pretty close, in my opinion. I feel like the odds might be a little bit too wide. We've got Nate Andrews minus 325. Potentially Lewis Muro plus 250. Potential live dog, but man, I really just don't know. I feel like maybe he might have to go for someone else in this fight, because once again, my Bellator knowledge not 110%. But speaking of 110%, man, Christian Edwards got knocked out by Big Tuna in his last fight. He got knocked out to Big Tuna. Ben Parrish, who is a huge favorite. I think it's like minus 500 or more favorite to win that fight. And he got knocked out, and then Ben Parrish went on to lose his next fight. So unfortunately, that loss hasn't aged super well, to be fair. Grant Neal, also another fighter that is very young. He's only 26 years old. Christian Edwards only 23 years old, and he recently lost his fight to Alex Polizzi by split decision. But Alex Polizzi really is a pretty good fighter in my opinion. He does hold a good win over Tyree Fortune, Maurice Jackson, Hamza Salim, Claudia Wilcox was building up his record, and Christian Edwards, man, Simeon Biong, pretty good win there. Hamza Salim as well. Both guys have fought Hamza Salim. Christian Edwards fought him after Grant Neal, and prior to that, he was just building up his record. Both guys are pretty young. Christian Edwards is 6'5" with a 78-inch reach, compared to Grant Neal, who's 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. So he's going to be a little bit more built than Christian Edwards, but Christian Edwards is going to be the much more rangy guy in that octagon. Let's look at the odds, man. We've got a very close odds. Grant Neal minus 165. I do agree, I was actually picking Grant Neal to win the fight originally when the first fight was announced, or when I did my first picks. I'm going to be going with Grant Neal to win the fight. Not a lot of confidence, because Christian Edwards is still a pretty live prospect, and it's very interesting because I feel like whoever loses this fight, the Bellator are probably going to put them back down at the bottom and build up their record again, and whoever wins, the Bellator are probably going to keep pushing, you know what I mean? It's like a prospect. So I feel like there's a lot on the line in this one, in my opinion. So I'm going to be going with Grant Neal to win the fight here. He's a little bit more experienced, but only by one fight, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. Jornel Lugo versus Danny Sabatello. Now, this is a very interesting one, because I think I was picking Jornel Lugo to win originally, and now the odds are out, and Jornel Lugo is the underdog. I think I'm still going to stick with the underdog Jornel Lugo in this one here. Plus 170 underdog to minus 210 for Danny Sabatello. Danny Sabatello, to be fair, not really the most exciting fighter in the world. He did fight on Dana White's Contender Series against Taylor Moore and won a decision. Then he won a decision over at Titan FC and fought in Bellator and fought the former UFC fighter Brett Johns, and his I believe it was Brett Johns' Bellator debut. and he won by decision. But Danny Sabatello, what he kind of does, he does take his opponents down, and he sort of just lays on them for the whole fight. He really doesn't have the most exciting fight style, which is why he wasn't signed on Dana White's Contender Series. Before that, he was getting a couple of good submissions, but yeah, Dana Sabatello didn't get signed by UFC, but he does have he's got a big mouth. He likes to talk a lot. I feel like if he sees this video, he probably will talk a lot of shit about me, because he's kind of just like that, man. It's pretty funny. I do respect it a little bit, but his fighting style really isn't something that a lot of people look forward to. But these guys, both Jornel Lugo and Danny Sabatello, are talking a lot about each other. I see a lot of interviews on MMA Island, as Instagram and their YouTube channel. Both guys really are talking, and both guys really are excited to fight each other. I don't think that these guys like each other either. Because Jornel Lugo beat Brian Moore by decision. He submitted Keith Lee, beat Caspal, Taylor Sutho, and Cortanis Ramones, sorry. But this is definitely going to be Jornel Lugo's toughest test of his career. You know what? I'm going to flip my pick. I'm going to go for the favourite. I'm sorry, Jornel Lugo. He just hasn't fought the competition level that Danny Sabatello is, and that Brett John twin really... I really like the Brett John twin. You know what? I'm flipping my pick. I'm sorry, Jornel. I'm going to be picking Danny Sabatello to win this fight by a decision in this one here. I think that the Danny Sabatello by decision prop could be pretty good. I will be going with Sabatello to win a decision here. He's actually a pretty good prospect, to be fair. Okay, so Nikita Mikhailov is actually taking this fight on very short notice. I believe it was about 1 week or week and a half's notice that Nikita Mikhailov took this fight. But he did beat Blaine Shutt by ground and pound only a couple of months ago. He does, however, win over Brian Moore, like Jornel Lugo does. And for that, he did beat a very good opponent in Muhammad Iminov. Enrique Barzola, he's got a patchy record recently. He had a draw to Rani Yahya a couple of years ago, which I guess is alright. Like, Rani Yahya is still in the UFC, I'm pretty sure, and he's still pretty good. And he did beat Darian Caldwell by ground and pound. Darian Caldwell was pretty good himself, but he did lose to Movsar Evloev, who's a great prospect. Bobby Moffett he beat, and Kevin Aguilar he lost to. And Kevin Aguilar is alright as well, I guess. But Nikita Mikhailov, much younger guy, he's only 23 years old. I think he's going to come in here and win a decision on short notice. I really do believe in Nikita Mikhailov's skill set to get the job done here. I think he's a great bantamweight prospect, and I think that Bellator's done a good job in picking up Nikita Mikhailov. He's the underdog right now, so I've got one underdog pick on the card. That is Nikita Mikhailov, and I do think he's going to win a decision in this one here. Oops, I'm not stopping recording. I've still got one more fight to talk about. Juliana Velasquez versus Liz Carmouche. I love this fight because I love the fact that Liz Carmouche is going to get like an opportunity for fight for another title. In case you guys don't know, way back in the day, way back in the day, Liz Carmouche was the other half of the first ever UFC female fight, where she did lose to Ronda Rousey by armbar in the first round. But she almost did choke out Ronda Rousey at one point. It was actually a very interesting fight. And then she went on to fight Jessica Andrade, who was actually main eventing this weekend's UFC. Which is pretty insane, man. And Alexis Davis just most recently got released from the UFC, so pretty crazy run that Liz Carmouche, and she's been fighting a lot of women that have been in the UFC for a very long time and still are, way back in the day anyway. But anyway, moving on from that, I think it's just awesome that Liz Carmouche, she fought for a title in the UFC, now she gets to fight for a title in Bellator 9 years later, which is pretty crazy. She did lose to the UFC to Valentina Shevchenko, and then she beat Deanna Bennett, she beat Vanessa Porto, and then she beat Kana Watanabe by standing TKO, actually, pretty impressively. Now she's fighting Juliana Velasquez, who is the champion. She beat Denise Kiholtz by split decision, and Elima Lee McFarlane, who is actually fighting tomorrow, or tomorrow in the Bellator, at Bellator 279 in a return fight by decision. But it's a tough one to pick because I feel like Liz Carmouche is just going to be such a live underdog in there. I know that she actually is a pretty decent underdog. I believe she is plus 160 right now. I do think Juliana Velasquez is going to win as the younger fighter, but Liz Carmouche, I feel like she's pretty live. She's a pretty live underdog. Liz Carmouche decision, Liz Carmouche submission, it could be pretty live. It's going to be a very interesting fight. I will be picking Velasquez to win, but I wouldn't be too surprised if we do see like some sort of upset from the Carmouche side, because I do think Carmouche is pretty live for an upset here. But that's my first picks for Bellator 278. I will be talking about Bellator 279 in 12 hours time after this video comes out, so hopefully you guys can look forward to that.